Hello, my friends. So in this video, we're going to learn how to create and remove directories. So in the last tutorial, we read these files and we wrote these files, and now we're going to learn how to create and remove whole directories. But before we do that, I want to show you one more thing that we can do with these files, and that is how to delete them. So the way we delete them is, again, by using this fs module. And we can use a method called unlink. So I can say fs.unlink and then pass through the name of the file that I want to delete. Now, because I'm sitting here over the same directory as these files, I can just pass in the file name, which is going to be write.txt. Then for the second parameter, I'm going to add a callback function in here, and that'll be called in case we get an error. And then I'm going to say console log error to see it on the console. All right, so if I save this now and run it through by saying node app, then this should go ahead and just delete that write me file. And that's awesome. But be careful, because if I run this again, all right, so I'm going to say node app, then I'm going to get an error. And it says right here, no such file or directory. That's because we've already deleted this file, right? So it's trying to delete it again, even though it doesn't exist. So I just want you to be careful that if you're using this method, that the file you're trying to delete actually exists. Otherwise, you will get this error, right? So we've deleted the file. Now let's move on to creating directories. There are two ways of doing this, of course, synchronously or asynchronously. So again, I'm going to go through the synchronous version first, and then we'll have a look at the asynchronous versions. So first up, let's create a directory. So we'll use the fs module. And the way we create a directory is by saying mkdir, which stands for make directory. Then we say sync. So this is, of course, the synchronous method. Now, what we need to do is pass through here the directory name that we want to create. So now I'm just going to call this directory my folder. So if I save this now and say node app, well, this is going to run through node and go ahead and create that directory. And we can see it appear here. All right, so that's great. So now, how do you delete directories? Well, we just replace mk with rm. And that stands for remove. You said it with me too, huh? Cool. All right, so now I'm going to remove this my folder directory. So we can save it now and run this again by saying node app, and you'll notice that my folder directory has been removed. All right, so that's how you do it synchronously. Now, remember, it's going to block up the code, okay? So ideally, we do want to work asynchronously. So we'll change these into asynchronous methods just by removing the word sync from it. All right, so now I'm going to make a directory asynchronously. So I'm just going to change this rm to mk. So we're saying mkdir to make a directory. Now remember, when we use asynchronous methods, we should use a callback function to do something once this action has been completed. So we can pass that callback function through here as a second parameter, and then we'll do something once it has created the directory. So now what I want to do is go ahead and read this readme file. So I'll say fs read file. And we did this in the last tutorial, I'm sure you remember. And the file that we want to read is readme.txt. Now remember, we do need to say the UTF-8 encoding. And then we fire a callback function once this is complete. So it takes in error first as the parameters, and then the data we retrieve. All right, very cool. So first of all, we're making this my folder directory. Then when it's complete, we're reading this file, and we're getting the data. So we can fire this callback function when it's finished reading the file. And then I want to pass through data into a new file and create that file inside the my folder directory. So I'm going to say fs.writeFile, and this is going to write a file in this directory. And again, we learned this in the last tutorial. So that means I can say it's in the /my folder directory. Then the file name is going to be write.me.txt. And what I want to write to this file is the data that we read right here. And for the last parameter, let's add our error handling callback function. Let's go ahead and save this and run it through Node just by saying Node app. Okay, so first of all, it creates this directory, and then it reads this file, and then it's going to create this write.me.txt file and the contents within it. All right, so that is the asynchronous way to create a directory. So let's very quickly go ahead and delete this directory. But before we do that, let's comment out this thing. So we'll first say fsrmdir, and then add callback function for error handling. Okay, so I'm going to say console.log error. All right, so now we're going to remove this my folder directory. Now, if I run this just the way it is, what do you think is going to happen? It's just going to go ahead and remove this my folder directory and what's ever inside of it, right? So let's go ahead and see that. Node app. And you'll notice an error, and the error is saying directory not empty. So we can't remove a directory without it being empty. I mean, it's often a good thing, right? So we need to get rid of this thing, first of all. So remember what I showed you before? We can always say fs unlink to remove a particular file. And it's in the /my folder. And then write.me.txt. So that way we're going to remove that file. Then we can pass in a callback function as the second parameter. And then once we've removed that file, we can go ahead and remove the directory. Bada boom, bada bing. So let's move this function into this one. And then we can save all that and run it through Node. So Node app, boom, and it goes away. It removes the file first of all, and then the my folder disappears as well. So that's how you remove and make directories in Node.js. So we've seen how to remove files, create directories, and then remove directories. Very cool. We'll take a quick break in here and then come back in the next lesson.